going to talk about preserved dinosaur tissues with an expert in the field. This is Genesis Week. And a welcome to this episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy, made possible by the supporters of CORE Ottawa, Citizens for Origins Research and Education. Excellence in pirate broadcasting. We hacked into the television satellite system from my brother's basement so we could continue to bring you the information the anti-creationists don't want you to see or hear, and giving glory to our creator while doing it. Remember, you can find us in cyberspace by punching in wazulu.com, that's me, or genesisweek.com, that's the show, which will take you to our YouTube channel where you can subscribe and get fancy extras like Crevo rants and full interviews with our guests. I'm your host, Ian Juby. Multiple times on this show, we have discussed the astonishing repeated discoveries of soft tissues still preserved in the fossil record, with a particular fascination for dinosaur tissues and even blood still preserved in fossil dinosaur bones. Now, last year, two researchers from the Creation Research Society published a paper detailing the finding of more soft dinosaur tissues preserved in a Triceratops horn. One of those researchers was Mark Armitage. Mark studied biology at the University of Florida. He holds a master's degree in biology with emphasis on electron microscopy from the ICR Graduate School. All his biological training is going to prove important for the subject at hand today. He is currently a doctoral candidate at Liberty University in the School of Education. He served as adjunct professor of biology at Master's College for 3 years and adjunct professor of biology and electron microscopy at Azusa Pacific University for 4 years. Mark's micrographs have appeared on the covers of 11 scientific journals, and he has published over 30 technical papers on microscopic phenomena in such journals as American Laboratory, Southern California Academy of Sciences Bulletin, Parasitology Research, Microscopy, and Microanalysis. He is a lifetime member of the Creation Research Society and is past president for the Southern California Society for Microscopy and Microanalysis, currently serving as treasurer. He joins me now via Skype, and I have wanted to have you on the show for quite some time, so welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you, Ian. It's great to be here. And yes, some of those long words are real tongue twisters, aren't they?
Yes. I'd like to start off with the iDino project. Now, I've talked about it here on the show before, and you've been heavily involved with it. What can you tell us about it?
Sure. Well, thank you, Ian. It's great to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you and your listeners and viewers. So we have a little show and tell today, which we'll get to, but iDino, what is iDino? iDino is an acronym that we came up with because we wanted something catchy that people could remember, but it does have a meaning. It stands for Investigation of Dinosaur Intact Natural Osteotissue, meaning we're studying dinosaur remains, mostly their bones, and we're looking for intact, natural, in other words, pre-existing, original osteotissue or bone tissue. And because bones are interesting organs in your body. They are organs. They're comprised of a lot of mineral, calcium, phosphate, other minerals, but they also have a lot of soft tissue in them. And there is a particular very interesting part of the soft tissue called an osteocyte, which is a bone cell. And they come in several different flavors. We can maybe discuss a little bit of that. But osteocytes are very characteristic cells. And any microscopist, any person who's done any study of bones, of really any mammalian, even reptilian or amphibian bones, avian bones, recognize osteocytes instantly. There's just no confusing an osteocyte with any other kind of cell. And so they're a wonderful cell to go hunting for in dinosaur tissues. Now, we began this work because, of course, we, as well as you and probably your viewers and most every creationist on the planet, was very excited to see the work of Mary Schweitzer, who is a researcher, a paleontologist from North Carolina State University. And she published a series of very interesting papers where she went to the Hell Creek Formation in Montana, which is a very well-known fossil graveyard. In fact, it's well known for Triceratops, but also T-Rex. And they found a very large T-Rex fossil and a very large femur. And of course, when you're in the field as a paleontologist and you want to remove bones, you jacket these things. First, you paint them with a plastic, a methyl acrylate, and then you bind it up with essentially casting material. Like if you broke your arm, you would put on a cast. Well, they put casts around these bones, then they flip them over and they put a cast on the other side, and they pull them out of the dig. And so, as everybody knows, this large femur that she had was too heavy to be lifted out by helicopter, and so they had to fracture and saw the femur up, and she sent some pieces back to her lab. And you know the story. She dissolved some of these in a weak acid and found all this soft tissue in it. She's found blood-like vessels and blood-like cells. They don't use the terminology. This is a blood cell, and this is an osteocyte. They call it an osteocyte-like cell because they don't want to state the obvious for whatever reason. But I'm sure they have their little paradigm to protect. But in any event, we were very excited about that work, as were most people. And so we went to the Hell Creek Formation in May of 2012. And we spent 3 days searching and digging, and we found the largest Triceratops horn ever located on that ranch. About a 48-inch long, 9-inch wide, intact, what they call a supraorbital horn. As you know, the Triceratops has 3 horns, and this was one that was over the eye, supraorbital. It was above the eye. Very large specimen, and but it was in a very bad state of decay. It was fractured into many pieces. When we took it out, it fractured into many pieces. It was filled with plant roots. It was filled with mud. It was kind of moist. Really unlike the femur, the T-Rex femur that Schweitzer found, which was completely encapsulated and encapsulated with this hard bone mineral, all the soft tissue inside. No. The horn that we found was highly vascular, had a lot of holes in it where the vascular bundles went through, and it was loaded with this wet mud. They call it matrix. It was loaded with matrix. So it must have been exposed to fungi and bacteria and algae and insects, microorganisms. I mean, it runs the gamut of what it could have been filled with, plant roots. So we were rather dejected, frankly, when we pulled it out of the ground. We thought, we're not going to find anything here. But I brought it back to the lab, and I worked on it for about 6 months. And lo and behold, we not only found osteocytes, but we found entire sheets of osteocytes. I mean, stretchy pieces of material that were, maybe 3 to 4 centimeters long that you could stretch like a piece of taffy and let go, and it would come back into conformation. And so I thin-sectioned some of that and looked at it under the microscope. And here I have a microscope, which I'm going to show you some images from in a second here. But I thin-sectioned that and located these osteocytes in 3 dimensions. In other words, you could focus down through the tissue and see these osteocytes placed throughout the whole z-axis in that tissue. So we were stunned by this, and of course it's way different from the find that Mary Schweitzer and others have found, because this shouldn't have been there at all. This should not have been there even after. Well, we would think these things were buried, maybe 4,000 to 6,000, 8,000 years ago, maybe. Even in that time frame, this stuff shouldn't be there. And so it's really an enigma, and I've gotten in trouble because I tell people I think it's a miraculous preservation. I think God miraculously preserved this for us to find it. I get in trouble. You'd be surprised, a lot of creationists call me out on that one, but I do. I really think that God chose this specific time and us for this task to find these things, and so we published it. We published this in a major journal. In fact, it got fast-tracked into the journal. I think it was 30 days from the time we submitted it until the time that it was accepted, which is unheard of. most of my papers take a year to a year and a half to get published. And so this was published very quickly.
Now, as we've discussed here on the show before, certainly the findings of Schweitzer and team were not the first. There was reports of dinosaur blood found in dinosaur bones back in the 1920s. So neither this finding nor Schweitzer's were the first.
No. My paper was not the first. In fact, this was not my first paper on this phenomena. Back in early 2000s, I published a paper in the Creation Research Society Quarterly. I received a T-Rex, a piece of a T-Rex femur that had been in a museum drawer for about 100 years. And so I fractured it open and I found soft tissues inside of it. So this was actually my second paper.
Okay, so the iDino team went looking for soft tissues.
Well, yes. In the horn and also in ribs, we found Triceratops ribs. And of course, all this is presented in the paper. By the way, the paper was published in an international journal called Acta Histochemica, which is a journal of cells and tissue. And so it was a natural fit for that journal. And it was published in 2013. So it's readily available. In fact, if you just Google Armitage Triceratops, the paper will come up and you can go and purchase it online from Elsevier. And Elsevier is a rather large publisher. They publish The Lancet, they publish Cell, and they've been publishing since about the 1600s. So I think they know a thing or two about publishing. So it was a great honor to be published in that journal. And but yes, we found soft vessels in the horn and in the rib, mostly in the rib. It appeared that most of the vessels were permineralized or fossilized inside the horn. But also very interestingly, in the rib, we found, because we fractured away some of these vessels, and inside those vessels, you could see all these tiny round microstructures, which we had to call red blood cell-like structures. We couldn't just come right out and say these are red blood cells, but they're obviously packed inside the vessel. The vessel's soft and pliable, and you've got all these round structures in there. I mean, come on, and any common sense person would say that looks like blood, and those look like blood vessels. Before they get hardened, these osteocytes are really cool little cells. They actually they come from blood cells. They descend from the white cell line, and they differentiate into what we call osteoblasts and osteoclasts, and then osteocytes. So there's three different types. The osteoblasts, of course, are building cells. So they're busy building bone. And so what they'll do is they'll all line up in the same direction. They're all linearly in the same direction on the same plane, and they will cement themselves in with this bone mineral. But at the same time, they build little tunnels between cells. They're called canaliculi. They're tiny little tunnels, and then they put a little thread called a filopodia. It's an extension of the cell, and all these filopodia go in all three directions, and they're all touching each other. All these bone cells, even in hard bone, are all touching each other, and they're all alive. And so what they're doing as you're walking or running or stretching or exercising, they're measuring the mechanical stress in your bones as you're doing these things. And so they will decide which area of the bones need to be deconstructed and repaired, and others can stay the way they are. And so osteoblasts build the bone mineral, osteoclasts dissolve the bone mineral, and those populations have to stay equal throughout your lifetime. Now, what happens when you get osteoporosis? Well, the osteoblasts die off. And so the ones that are building bone cell die off, and the osteoclasts are busy deconstructing bone. And so you get big voids inside your bone that are not repaired because the osteoblasts are dying off. So they give you a drug that increases the population of the osteoblasts and keeps those populations equal. And so I think I heard somewhere that your entire bone is replaced every 12 years with these little cells that do this. And so it's crazy. It's really an amazing area of study in anatomy, and I would encourage anybody to do a unit on bone cell morphology and structure and function. It's crazy what these things are doing. But as I say, these osteocytes are characteristic. You recognize them instantly. And so when you're dealing with a dinosaur bone and you find osteocytes in it, and I'm going to show you some here on this screen here. I think you can see on this screen here. These are bone cells. That's an osteocyte right there from a dinosaur cell, and it's on this microscope. That's one single cell which we've isolated out. These cells are so characteristic that to claim that your bone is contaminated with something from the environment is ridiculous.
That's a major point.
It's a huge point, because the contamination claim is, well, there's osteocytes from some other more recent organism sequestered inside that bone. So you're asking me to believe that a bird or something died next to this fossil Triceratops horn, and that the bird somehow broke a wing as it was crashing into the ground and dying, and the osteocytes had the presence of mind to crawl out of the bird bone and hunt around and find a Triceratops horn and crawl deeply into the Triceratops horn and take up residence in the proper conformation. Remember, these things are all aligned in perfect XY space. So they're all pointed in the same direction and all on the same plane. So it's ludicrous to make the contamination claim. And not only that, we're seeing inside the bone cells nucleus-like structures. Now remember, we can't call them nuclei. We have to call them nuclear-like structures, right? But here you're expecting the biofilm to not only find the proper place where the osteocyte is, replicate it in its entirety, including the internal organelles. I mean, it's ridiculous to assume this. And so the biofilm theory has gone by the boards. In fact, Mary Schweitzer did an excellent series of experiments whereby she actually found in the nucleus-like structure, she found histones, which are the packaging proteins that package up DNA. As you know, DNA can be strung out into long, thin strings, which it's deconstructed that way in order to copy it, right? In order to copy DNA into messenger RNA, it has to be unwound. But the winding up is done by these proteins called histones that wind and super wind and triple wind and quadruple wind until we get these chromosomes, what we recognize as chromosomes. And so she found actual dinosaur histones inside the nucleus-like structures in this wonderful series of experiments. So I think we've all agreed now that this is real dinosaur tissue. It's staggeringly amazing that this lasted the supposed 65 to 70 million years and didn't decompose. And now she's published a recent paper which says, well, it was the blood. It was the blood that somehow preserved it. And again, it's like a 10th grade science project to publish a paper like that. That's just too fantastic.
You put together a DVD on the research and put a video on YouTube as well. Please tell us about the DVD.
Sure, absolutely. The iDino DVD has a lot of photos of the dig. It has a total description of the dig. It describes our laboratory. It gives an overview of the kind of instrumentation that we use in our laboratory. For example, a lot of people are not familiar with the different type of light microscopes. So we talk about light microscopes, dissecting and compound. We talk about the scanning electron microscope. We talk about the transmission electron microscope. And we give a basic understanding of how these things operate, because it's pretty technical. So we try to explain it in a way that's easy for the average person on the street to understand. And then we talk about how the tissues get processed, how they get put into the microscopes, how the images are taken. And then there's video of all the different types of microscopy that we do. You can see the stretchiness, you can see the osteocytes. We actually focus through a very deep section of tissue. And we'll start out on the top surface, and we focus all the way through and all the way back up. So you can see all these osteocytes placed in this thick tissue that we found. And what else? I guess, oh, it shows my laboratory at California State University Northridge, all of the microscopes and equipment that we use there. So it's a fairly comprehensive treatise on what did we find, where did we find it, how did we process it, what the results were, and the equipment that we used it in, the laboratories that we used it in. It's an hour long. It's $25. People can email me, and I can email them the information about it, and we mail it right out for people who order it. But it's very high quality. It's got video shot through the microscope, and they can see that stretchy stuff. There's 2 or 3 places on the DVD where I show the stretchiness of these tissues.
And people can get a sneak peek of what's on the DVD from your YouTube video. What are we looking at here?
Essentially, what it shows is about maybe a 5 or 6 centimeter long, 3 centimeter wide, flat ribbon of this tissue, this sheet of tissue that we found deep inside the horn. And I grab it with 2 very fine needle forceps, and I stretch it. And I stretch it in 2 different axes. And as I let go, you can see it come back to its original conformation. So just like a piece of taffy, you would stretch that. I stretched it out and let it go, and it came back to its original form.
Now, apparently you're working on a children's book related to this as well.
Yes, we are working on a children's book. It's going to be illustrated. It's for children ages maybe 7 and up, maybe to age 99. I don't know. I still feel like a child. But it's called, it uses an osteocyte we called Old Stretchy. And so Old Stretchy is an illustrated bone cell who tells the story of the Triceratops horn throughout the book. It's going to be in color, hardcover, fully illustrated, and a lot of pictures too of the actual work that we've done. So we're looking forward to publishing that. And if people want to email me, I can send them a pre-publication order form, and they can get a special price if they order it before we publish it. So if you want to post that, we can do that.
Well, Mark, this has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know the viewers will really appreciate this. So from them and myself, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, and we'll do it again when you're ready.
You can contact Mark for more information about his book and the iDino Project DVD via email, micromark@juno.com. Now, research does cost a tremendous amount of money, but you can see the fruit research bears. And I can testify that Creation Research Society is very prudent with their funds and has accomplished an awful lot with extremely little. I know they would appreciate your financial support for the iDino project, as well as many other research projects they fund, and you can support them at creationresearch.org. This interview was edited for television, but you can catch the entire fascinating interview on our YouTube channel. Just head on over to genesisweek.com and you can find it there. Stick around. We'll be back in 1 minute.
Not again!
To the horror of both fans and enemies, Ian Juby is back with more ranting goodness.
Okay, Jacques. You first.
Just when you thought his meds had kicked in, Ian goes off on a tangent about what killed the dinosaurs, the origin of life, defining evolution, and yes, even sex. It wasn't enough for an R rating, but nowadays, what is? Volume 4 of his ever-popular and ever-hated Kurivo Rants has 8 new short, fast, funny, and hard-hitting episodes. You can get your copy on the soon-to-be-extinct DVD for $15 plus shipping and handling, or purchase the instant digital download of all 8 tracks for just $8. Or you can buy all 4 volumes of his world-infamous rants for the price of 3. Order your copies today and have a party with, like, popcorn and stuff. Visit Ian's bookstore today.
Woohoo! Mail for me?
Ah!
Yep, that's the one. East Vietnamese jumping spider. The venom is so strong that one bite can kill any child and 95% of adults. The surviving 5% typically slip into a coma for 3 to 6 months, only to wake up with permanent paralysis.
Had a couple of tweets in response to my response to the Nyham debate. Natas Chaos tweeted, "So this is what it sounds like when one person who doesn't know science tries to cover for another. Yikes." Yeah, there was a lot of people who didn't know anything about science trying to cover for Bill Nye's mistakes, and really not hitting the mark. Then there was those who didn't even lift a finger to help, showing that they knew even less about the science than Bill did, seeing as how their only response was to hurl vague mocking. Vincenzo Russo also tweeted, "Ha! I am laughing my head out. Nicely done. Thanks, Ian." Well, thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Christian Firefighter wrote in on YouTube, "Mr. Juby, I anxiously awaited your reply to the Ham-Nye debate. You did not disappoint. Excellent." James K. Guy also wrote in on YouTube, "Hi Ian, love your videos. Every now and then I find something I disagree with. I hope you don't mind my taking the time to point something out in that regard. I've heard before that the claim that Noah was warning people of the flood, and this was their chance to board the ark. But there really isn't any scriptural basis for saying this." Thanks for writing in. Actually, the reference for Noah preaching to those before the flood comes from 1 Peter 3:19 and 20, where it is speaking about Jesus preaching by the Holy Ghost to spirits now in prison. Who were those spirits? The ones who were disobedient while the ark was being built, and God patiently waited. So in other words, Jesus was preaching to the people by the Holy Ghost through Noah, to the people before the flood, who were then condemned by that flood. With only a few, that is, 8 souls, were saved. Well, I gotta call that a wrap. Thanks for watching Genesis Week. I know there's a lot of competition out there for your viewership, and we're grateful you chose to watch Genesis Week. Remember, you can send in your comments, questions, hate mail, and Easter presents to us in a number of ways. You can send us an email, comments@genesisweek.com, or you can send us a tweet @GenesisWeek. Or you can go to genesisweek.com, which is our YouTube channel. Find the most recent show and post a comment there. Or you can leave a comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/GenesisWeekTV. Remember those words of warning from our Creator, the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me." We'll see you next week.
We are a viewer-supported program and need your support to keep this program on the air. Please pray for us, and if you wish to financially support the program, Canadians can make a tax-deductible donation to Core Ottawa, Canada North Post Office Box 72075, Ottawa, Ontario, K2K 2P4. While we cannot offer tax-deductible receipts outside of Canada, donors wishing to financially support the program can do so online at ianjuby.org/donations, and thank you for your support.